You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Shane.
I'm Dave, and I'm thinking about experience, as in experience points or ticks, or whether they're needed at all. What do you think, Shane?
I think that despite being this foundational innovation of the hobby, the driving force that got people interested in stuff like D&D in the first place, I think there's a growing segment of the role-playing community for whom XP isn't useful anymore. It's not that they don't necessarily say it. They're not going to. If you walk up to someone and say, "Is XP a bad system?" or something, they'll probably just shrug and brush off the idea. But I think there's a growing sense that it doesn't really add as much to a game as it used to.
Okay. I suppose my response to that would be, when you're talking about an XP system, which one? Because there are a multitude.
That's fair.
Talk about the early days of the hobby. For XP, XP, a lot of it, if not all of it, was coming from exploration related activities, which mostly translated to XP by treasure retrieved. And for years I thought this sounded like nonsense, because I was exposed to, you get XP for killing monsters.
Yeah.
But in recent years, possibly due to that whole OSR blog influence, I've started to see the merits of XP from treasure, as in, if it encourages players to get creative, as in, we're not just in here to be murder hobos. We can bypass those horribly dangerous monsters through clever planning, or sneaking around, or bribery, or making alliances, and get that sweet loot without getting ourselves killed.
Yeah, that's certainly a paradigm that original D&D set up, and it's popular to this day, as we've seen by the OSR movement. But my thought on that is that system didn't survive to the modern day. No, not as a mainstream thing.
That's true.
And which is odd, because when you actually do the theory crafting on it, it says it's XP for gold, but actually it's XP for exploration. But that was never how it was sold. It was just said, here's how you get XP. You get XP from gold and a little bit from monsters. That was how it was sold. And the theory behind it, it's almost like it was a subconscious thing. That they were afraid to, if they said it explicitly, this is to encourage exploration, they would have, broken the magic or something.
I'm not sure it's necessarily afraid to say it, but it might be a case of, like you're saying, a subconscious thing, as in, this is the solution the original writers arrived at intuitively, as in, this just made sense to them. And honestly, driving XP by exploration, frankly, appeals to my sensibilities at this stage, as a GM more, because you get the behavior you incentivize, to be blunt about it. And if all the XP in a system is from killing monsters, take one, and players like increasing their character's power, and the main way to get power is XP, then you're going to see a lot of monster killing. And that's going to be the focus of the, or at least a big focus of that campaign. I remember being a little bit offended by the 3.5 Dungeon Master's Guide when it recommended either no or very little XP for role playing.
Yeah,
In what's meant to be a role playing game.
Yeah, it didn't really have by default, it didn't really have the thing other than vague role playing awards, and it was a tiny fraction of the combat XP. But that's sort of a development out of sort of default drives in role playing games that developed over the 80s and 90s, which was that people didn't seem to really want exploration as a core activity. Not when I say people, I'm not trying to generalize too much, but like it seems like for the majority of people, they were looking for what they would consider the main activity, the thing they had rules for, which was combat, because a lot of the exploration rules were hidden away in the Dungeon Master's Guide or whatever equivalent for your system, and therefore they didn't have the tools to engage with exploration as a mechanical thing to do, the same way that, say, the GM might have. And this was sort of a part of a push against GMs setting the agenda of a game and more towards players having some input. And when players had input, they sort of defaulted to what was in front of them, which was usually the combat rules, and therefore a feedback loop of sorts was set up. Now we're go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just thinking about my earlier statement and realizing I might be in danger of contradicting myself slightly. XP for role playing. Well, what behavior does that incentivize? And you would hope it incentivizes role playing, but I'm not so sure that it does, because if you're just getting XP for playing the character, like the characters aren't necessarily going to do anything.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily a very fun game.
Yeah.
And that is the other word in that trio, game. And
yeah.
I suspect this is one reason I'm not so much into story games as a genre, because they do seem a bit light on the whole game aspect.
Yeah, there's a sort of element of subjectivity in any piece of role play, where it was just like, is that just you? Yeah, it's like, is playing your character the same thing as role play? Well, it can, but people start to say, well, you can't reward people just for sitting at the back of the party complaining about their sword. But maybe you could. There's actually like other than the rules of the system, there's no rules to say you can't have XP for being a gripe.
Sure, there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing to stop that. But I suppose the question is, and I keep coming back to this notion. What does the GM and what do the players want to see happen at the table? And hopefully it's the same thing, whatever that may be. As a GM, I love seeing players come up with clever plans and creative solutions to problems. I can't. I'm not inclined to make it easy for them. Like although perhaps subconsciously, I'll throw them a bone without realizing it. I'm far from a killer GM, like, for example. At the danger of rambling, I suppose it does occur to me that are the XP systems, the various XP systems, like incentivizing the sort of behavior I want to see, or my players want to see?
Yeah. And that sort of thing is because once you set up your XP system, you have your incentive structure. And I think that might be why an awful lot of games, as time's gone on, have moved away from this specific activity gets you XP to how good of a session did you have? That's how much XP you get. You see things like, oh, you get 1 XP per session, 2 if you did some role playing, and 3 if you achieved a goal. That's a very common approach these in a lot of games, and that
World of Darkness sounds similar to that actually. World of Darkness games. Sorry for cutting across you. Go on, sir.
No, that's absolutely sort of the paradigm. I think that's probably when it was probably existed before World of Darkness, but I think that sort of codified the thing, and that is interesting when you have the premise that XP is to incentivize behavior, because the only behavior that type of XP system incentivizes is having sessions and then trying to make those sessions entertaining, which is sort of the point of play. And No, go ahead.
I suppose there's a power, like I think there's a bit of a paradox when it comes to fun, and like it can be a case of if you aggressively try to have fun, you can end up not enjoying yourself all that much. I suppose the way I'm coming to see RPGs is the job of the GM is not to ensure the players have fun. The job of the GM is to cultivate the conditions that enable fun to happen as an emergent property. And that is a slightly long-winded way of saying that the GM preps the situation where players can enjoy themselves. And I think it is a key distinction, because fun, I think there does need to be a certain amount of structure for, the fun to happen. Otherwise it just becomes a mess, and not everything it could be. So I suppose what I'm getting at is directly incentivizing, fun. Ironically, can end up in less fun situations than another incentive system.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to balance, because of the social aspect of the RPG, it sort of has this inherent, the point is to hang out with your group of friends and do things, and if you're focused on that, then the actual game you're playing can seem superfluous. And if you live in that headspace where it doesn't really no matter what we're playing, it's about having fun, then an XP system will fall to the wayside, because you're not worried about the behavior of the game you're playing. You're worried about the group dynamic. And I think that's where I'm coming with this idea that for a lot of groups, XP systems are falling by the wayside, is because they don't view, we're playing D&D, or we're playing Call of Cthulhu, or we're playing whatever new indie game is the hottest right now. It doesn't matter to them, because the point isn't so much to engage with what makes each of those games unique. It's the point is to have the game with their group, as it were. Now, obviously, that's a very... I may be exaggerating the effect for, example, but I do think that is a sort of a default primary driver here, and engaging with the mechanics of the game and what behavior it incentivizes might have become, for a lot of these people, a secondary goal.
I think that while that makes a certain amount of sense as an explanation, I'd question whether that is whether they're not missing out on something by not engaging as much as they could, because then again, I like playing and running a variety of different games with some quite different levels of crunchiness in rules depth, in focus, in theme, and I do like systems which lean into their theme. I mean, Dark Heresy has all sorts of mechanics for leaning into investigations and the horrible scenarios that the acolytes will run into, and it works as crunchy and D100 whiff factory it can be. It does lean into its theme very well. It feels like a 40k game, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, and I always praise those D100 games for getting that feel so right. But at the same time, the XP system, at least as my memory of the default XP system, was that same. How much progress did you make in your investigation system? Each session you judge, did they just fart around complaining about the administratum, or did they actually find a cultist, or did they stop the ritual and then go 100 XP, 200 XP, 300 XP? And that's, as I say, that's our default system for a lot of games. But other than maybe do your job as part of the Inquisition, something which they are incentivized to do from the fact that it's the Inquisition, and if you don't do stuff for them, you will be disappeared. But there's less inherent drive to be exceptional and go above beyond and try something super crazy if you're getting a steady trickle of XP every game. But I don't know, we're deep in the mires of psychology with this. Is the thing. It's just we want to incentivize people, but we don't want to necessarily make them feel like they're being forced into a certain way of play, because modern people value very highly the ability to just sort of drop the default mode of play and spend a session or two on some madcap scheme where involving, creating a circus and, recruiting a giant to dress up as a clown or something like that. That's, I think, one of the things is people very highly value flexibility in their games, and if there's only one way to get advancement in a game, they could feel restricted, and so they prefer XP systems where you can spend a couple of sessions just mucking about, and you won't pause in your advancement, but you can still play. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that there is also the thought of what XP is supposed to represent in universe. Because some systems, you get XP for using skills, and you can only spend XP on skills you've used, such as Travelers on a Red Road. If you want to get good at, say, hunting in the frozen lands of the north, you're going to want to actually practice hunting. Like I say, keep trying it, or get somebody to train you at the very least. You can't just arbitrarily decide, oh, I'm better at hunting now, or it's not a level-based system, which is actually a consideration that really does need to be addressed. Whether XP is just piling up until you reach a level, or if XP is piling up until you reach a certain rank, which determines how you can spend that XP, or if it's open, and if it's open to, as soon as you have any XP or advancement points, that you can allocate them as you see fit. or if there's no some other system like which I suppose Travis on a Red Road falls under.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, like I'm not saying that it's XP has zero incentive. Even, pretty strong story-based gamers will still feel some influence of, if I do this, this, and this, I can get an advancement or something. Like, there's not zero effect. I just think that the effect has really waned over the years. And I'm thinking of a recent D&D game I ran a few years back where, I outlined explicitly everything that would get my players XP, and, what they get for exploring, what they would get for combat, and it had basically no effect on their behavior. They still wanted to play their characters as the primary thing. And even then, that's D&D, the ultimate in what people consider advancement-based games, because they didn't want the XP system to intrude on their behavior. They sort of wanted it as a sort of background noise where they would get some advancement for what they did, but if they wanted to spend a session just messing around the village for a bit, they were okay with that. And that sort of leads into, I guess, the idea that advancement, which was a crucial element of making D&D popular, being on the XP train, getting your levels, and going from guy with a stick to Conan, I don't think that has primacy anymore. Like, it's still very important, but it's not the sole, or it's not the major driving influence that it used to be. Role-playing games have developed to a point where just being in the game space, playing your character, for a lot of people, that's enough, and they don't need to get new levels or new edges or similar elements. They still like them, that's absolutely true, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary anymore. And there's a growing number of games where XP has been tossed out in favor of either no advancement or very particular advancement based on the act of play.
Yeah, that's it's certainly a trend. I would question the some flaws, potential issues with say advancement based, advancement based leveling or. Well, first of all, it only works for systems which are level based because because you can't unless you're just handing a massive chunk of XP for reaching a point. And I suppose this is my main issue with the idea that it becomes a little bit arbitrary. As in, the GM seems to, it can be a case of the GM just picking, now you level up. And it also can remove incentive to try things, because if players get the idea that we go to A, B, C and we'll level up, we go to D and E, we'll level up again. I wonder if it would discourage them from well, I suppose distractions, or like the rigmarole with the circus you were referring to earlier. As in, will that get us a level? The GM, is the GM going to be okay with that?
Yeah, I one of the things I noticed with the indie story games of late, of stuff like Blades in the Dark and Powered by Apocalypse, is that despite in the theory being fairly rules light systems, they actually have they actually put an awful lot of space on their character sheets for this is the things that get you XP. It turns the XP triggers into not so much an element of the system, although that can help, but the archetype that you're playing will determine how you get XP. And then XP stops being a thing that GM gives out, but it's actually given out by the system, by the act of play. So,
alright, that is certainly a way around it.
Yeah, well, like the arbitrary sort of handout system, that forces the GM into a sort of value judgment mode that some GMs would like, sure, but a lot of GMs wouldn't feel comfortable with. This is like, my players are having fun, but by these rules in the book or by these rules that I've made up, this is not, game treasure, or this is not following the story. My XP rules prevent me from giving XP for this. And this is where I feel like that's a tension that maybe is being resolved by either making XP either explicitly a system thing based on your choice of character, or it's driving this sort of unofficial system of we're not really going to have XP. We're going to have reaching a point in the story or the character story. This is where we get like either level up or a big story based advancement. And that's I think that's moving. In fact, listeners, you may be shocked to find there's actually a chunk of the OSR that is thinking of brushing aside the XP systems of old and turning advancement into an explicitly story-based thing. It's like, no, you don't get more hit points by, stealing gold and stabbing goblins to a certain point. You get more hit points by going to the up the top of the mountain to the temple of the bull god and sacrificing a fresh bull, and he gives you an extra D6 hit points. Or you learn proficiency in tridents by swimming under the water to meet the merfolk weapons master, again training from him while drowning. I
mean that's certainly an approach.
It's certainly an approach, but it's also one that kind of becomes boutique, and then you have to either be in the situation where you've seeded these little blobs of advancement all around your game setting, or your players are coming to you saying, I want to advance in this way, and you say, right, well, I'll give me a second and I'll come up with some random piece of my world where you can get that chunk of advancement, or you changed your character or whatever. So, like, that's, as I say, these are not, like, primal changes in the way people think about RPGs. They're still, even for most of these people, the joy of advancement for advancement's sake is still there, but it is sort of a growing trend, I think. Is it going to divide the RPG space into XP havers and story lovers? I don't know. That debate seems to have been going on for decades. I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon, but I do think it is sort of a bit of a, not fracturing is the wrong word, just sort of development. The branch has budded off an extra approach, as it were, and some people would like to sort of be between those branches, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, gamers and particularly game designers will always find something to distinguish themselves. But what you were talking about earlier about seeding worlds with advancement. There's again OSR Sphere. Blood and Bronze is a Mesopotamian themed sword and sorcery game, where if you want to gain advancements, like as in improvements to your character, you have to seek out a patron, and they are going to have requirements for you. And then you, like, once they've accepted you, once they've become your patron, then you can start to advance up their level tree, their level sheet, and they'll give you more and more abilities. But you're also tying yourself quite tightly to them and their, well, whims and or cause. I thought it was quite a neat way of showing the theme of very hierarchical societies.
Yeah.
Because even when you're outside of the mainstream society, there's still a hierarchy.
Yeah. And that, again, that's sort of, that's another element of XP where there's maybe a tiny bit of tension, whereas XP sort of inherently comes with a theme of this is how you get ahead in society, is by doing this activity, that activity. And some people really, really love when there's a strong theme. And some people who will be against there being a strong theme to advancement because, it feels restrictive to them. And obviously you're never going to have everyone be happy, but it is one of those things that you have to be thinking of. Like, one of the big reasons from a backlash of say modern D&D is that it's still incentivizing, violence as a way to get ahead. Whereas the theme it's trying to bring across is, heroic adventure against horrible odds. It also can imply, just killing is good, and people want to maybe renegotiate the terms under which they consider how you get ahead in society or in your game.
Yeah. I mean, if you like, there are certainly games where the theme is, you're doing a bug hunt. The Stay Frosty melange of alien bugs and killer robots in the future, and stalking predatory aliens with plasma weapons, demonic creatures from portals to hell, and that's the point there, and that's it's all good if you have a GM in a group that's up for it. Sounds like a good time.
Ultimately, I think part of the issue is that most RPGs only really come with their base XP system. They put their flag in one place, and sometimes they'll give variant rules. Usually in whatever Dungeon Master section is, the rules is there so that players don't see them and then get weirded out when all of a sudden the GM is throwing in these new rules. But it is one of those things where the choice of what form of advancement is right for a given party is sort of a thing that has to be decided by the group, or like the GM primarily, but also if the GM chooses something that the rest of the players are not going to engage with, then it's not a great choice. And so that's where I think an awful lot of people, you see house rules on XP all over the place, and an awful lot of people, and even that's just the people who are vocal about it. A lot of people will just default to, it's been 5 sessions, you level up, and that sort of soft pressure is part of what has reduced the complexity of calculating your XP per dungeon level systems you had gotten in older games. Yes, 3.5 is an older game at this point.
Oh yeah, but
My point here is that at a certain point, it's something you're going to have an adult conversation about, and it's just like, do you want an incentive structure, or do you want to just get a level whenever you kill one of the 7 lieutenants of the big bad, or what have you? And there's nothing wrong with that too. As long as it's agreed beforehand. I'm currently running a game where I'm going to say, here's 7 dungeons. You get a level up when you get to the end of each dungeon, and not any other way. So that focuses the game. It's meant to be a focus game of play in dungeons. So having advancement very explicitly tied to what we want to do in game, that's absolutely fine. But that was something I very explicitly pointed out as the premise of the game. Whereas a lot of games, they figure out their premise, 3 sessions in, once they've discover the clown makeup and decide, well, there's a giant over there, and that's where default XP systems might fall flat, and it can be tough to change XP systems mid-campaign. So,
yeah, I mean, like I've seen arguments that you can adjust XP gains on a case by case basis. Say, if you've systems where players, PCs aren't on the same XP, and there's a PC death, where you could allow more XP to come to the newer player, because, well, with the in-universe justification that, well, they're traveling with more experienced, seasoned adventurers, and are picking up the tricks of the trade quickly, because they've got that experience to draw on, to coin upon.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's just like, I think one of the reasons why started level 1 things have gone by is because people were more worried about game flow than they were, the point of rewards. But I think we've covered that in other episodes. Folks, I have high-fluting ideas about, the development of our hobby. I'm not sure I have solutions, because I'm not sure it's a problem. It's simply a trend I think we should be thinking about in our games, is like, is the game that I want to run going to benefit from this XP system or that XP system? And is the group I'm running it for going to engage with that XP system? And that's a question the adventuring party can't answer for you, and maybe rules designers can only do so much. Ultimately, I think it's going to be up to you whether you care about XP. You and your players. And your DMs.
I think that is a good point to declare that we've reached an advancement point and this party is over.
Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.
Ooh, I get a feat this level.